Hi there, Chris from TotallyEV, and here we're doing a dedicated audio review of the Seat Leon E Hybrid. If you'd like a review of the vehicle itself and specifically to see how it compares like for like with the Audi A3 TFSIe, do check it out on your pop-up banner or indeed in the description below. Also down there you'll find links to our social media platforms, and if you want to keep up with the channel, definitely do subscribe and hit that bell notification. Now to kick things off, I'm going to talk about its audio configuration, and no matter which trim level you go for, you'll find 7 speakers that come as standard. Here you're treated with 5 speakers at the front of the cabin and 2 at the rear. The exact placement of them is 1 in each of the doors, so all 4 doors, and then at the front you've got 1 in each of the A-pillars and 1 in terms of the center speaker, so therefore totaling up to 7. Now for you to configure the speakers to your liking, you can do so through the 10-inch infotainment system. Now here you've actually got a 5-band equalizer. Now for my settings, in terms of getting a more balanced sound signature, I reduced the 125 Hz region by a few notches, left the 250 Hz and 1 kHz frequency bands untouched, added a few notches to the 5 kHz band and left the 10 kHz band untouched. Of course your settings might differ from mine, so definitely do share them if you have them in the comment section below. As for the sound focus, or in terms of the balance and fader, I left that at all and centered respectively. Now to give you a bit of a taster of how the system performs, I'm going to place the camera and microphone in 4 separate locations in the cabin and play back a song. The song we'll be using is from Priya J. The song name is called Falling, and if you're interested in hearing it or indeed purchasing it, do check it down in the description below.
When I reach the brink, don't stop to think. I always sing, and now I'm next thing you know, I'm crawling, I am crawling my way back to falling from so high, falling from so high.
Now while I appreciate a sound demo that's compressed over YouTube and indeed comes from my own microphones isn't going to be ideal, it just gives you a little bit of a taster as to how it sounds. But of course you're here potentially for my subjective opinion, and as a result we're going to get into it. First off, in terms of its sub bass. Now it doesn't have a dedicated subwoofer unit. As I mentioned before, the audio configuration only has full to mid-range drivers or tweeters, and here, despite that fact, the sub-bass extension is pretty pronounced. You can definitely feel it at the front and the rear of the cabin, and it must be definitely commended. In comparison to the likes of the Audi A3, which I would say is pretty much its near identical sibling, at least under the shell, here the Seat Leon definitely does give you a little bit more of an exciting low-end rumble. Now as for its mid-bass presence, it's actually quite pronounced, to the point where I felt that dialing down the bass a few notches yielded to a little bit of a better all-round listening experience. But of course, if you're a bass head, you might want to leave it in terms of default, or indeed crank it up if you're pretty crazy in terms of how much bass you want in your face. What I will say is that while the bass is present, it's a tad bit uncontrolled, and in this respect it just won't compete with more premium systems out there on the market. Now as a result of the large amount of mid-bass that it's got, and even if you were to tailor it down, what you'll find is the lower mid-range is definitely recessed and it's pushed back. So listening to Priya's vocals, for example, you'll find that the lower mids just don't come out as much as you might expect. As for the upper mids, they're a little bit better, so again, listening to Priya's tracks, you can hear her vocals come out in this frequency range a little bit better, although yet again the overall sound signature is quite pushed back. So therefore, just expect a V-shaped sound signature as standard. Now you might expect, oh, well, you can just tailor that through the EQ, I can just ramp up the mid-range. You could, but if you do so, you're going to get a more artificial reproduction, which isn't exactly what the artist is trying to portray, and indeed will just give you a slightly odd and artificial sound. As you saw through the infotainment segment, I did add a few notches to the upper mids, and here I do feel that adding a few just a few notches doesn't hinder the overall system performance, but adding too much will definitely hinder the overall sound reproduction, at least again to my ears and to my experience and to my listening tastes. As for the highs, they do extend really well. In some cases you might want to add a few notches in terms of its 10 kilohertz band, although I did find it to be a little bit overzealous, specifically if you're cranking up the volume at louder volumes, and as a result means that, well, it might just detract from the overall listening experience and might give you a little bit of ear fatigue. Again, that is to do with my own hearing range, so yours might differ. So depending on what you prefer, and specifically in terms of what music you listen to, you might actually prefer to tailor it up or indeed take it down a little notch. Now moving on to the Soundstage, I do feel that it's both good and bad at the same time. I know that's really helpful, but let me explain. At the front of the cabin you're treated with more audio drivers, and as a result you get more of a fulfilling sound, and therefore you just feel a little bit more engaged with the music that you're listening to. At the rear, however, you're treated with only 2 audio drivers, so your rear occupants won't be able to enjoy music as much as you do if you're the driver. Now in terms of the overall width and depth, no matter where you sit in the cabin, you'll find that it's a little bit close sounding. It doesn't have that sort of width that you might expect. And given that it's a relatively small cabin, I know it's kind of limited in terms of how it can portray kind of a wide type of sound signature, but the addition of additional audio drivers throughout the cabin would have helped in this respect. Specifically when it comes to positional cues and the overall instrument separation, I do feel it's a little bit, well, lackluster in this department, and it's a shame that specifically at the front of the cabin where you're treated with 5 audio drivers, that the positional cues aren't just that little bit better. And so this all leads me onto my verdict. Granted, the overall system could be a little bit better in terms of its mid-range reproduction and even in terms of its low-end reproduction, where it could add a subwoofer to give you that low-end extension. It should be said that the 7 speakers that are comprised within the Seat Leon E Hybrid, or the non-hybrid variant as well, are pretty good. For most consumers, I think they'll have a quite joyous experience, and given that, well, hearty low-end response, I think most people will be left with a smile on their face. So as a result, it actually gets TotallyEV's Value Award because, well, it comes included as standard and is definitely better than some other stock systems out there on the market. However, you should consider that if you're an audiophile and you're specifically looking to upgrade the audio system that's comprised within a vehicle that's a plug-in hybrid and furthermore costs around £30,000, you should potentially consider the Audi A3 TFSIe, because while the stock system is decent in terms of the A3's system, that is, it can be upgraded to the Bang & Olufsen system instead, and as a result can give you a far bettered audio experience. So the reason I'm saying this is because I'm curious to know if people out there looking to get the Seat Leon E Hybrid, regardless of all the other factors that were having to be considered, would you actually look at the Audi A3 TFSIe just because it has the Bang & Olufsen audio package as an upgrade, because you're serious about audio and you love driving as well? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm just genuinely intrigued. Well, anyway, I've been Chris from TotallyEV. If you like this video, give it a like, and of course subscribe and hit that bell notification to keep up with the reviews. And I do have to say thank you for those people who have already subscribed, and furthermore who are keeping up with the channel. Your love is definitely appreciated. Alright, take care of yourselves and goodbye.